Hi everyone, it's Chenzo from Reality Art Pod. I'm here to talk about everything that happened on week 2 of Big Brother 25. And what a week it was. We had heroes, we had villains, we had flips, we had flops, we had flip-flops. I'm going to be recapping and reviewing everything that happened on the episodes. I'm also going to include some commentary from the live feeds. And at the end of the video, stick around for my updated player rankings. So let's dive into the Sunday episode. We start off on day 9. They get zapped into what looks like Elm Street from the video game Dead by Daylight. It actually looks pretty scary. This is probably one of the best sets for a challenge that they've ever had. The Nether Gorgon is there to greet them, and I've seen a lot of feedback about the Nether Gorgon looking silly. I thought the Nether Gorgon was terrifying. If you encountered the Nether Gorgon in real life, you would be absolutely scared out of your mind. The diary rooms also have a scary background. I appreciate Big Brother for giving us something different with this. As the previous head of household, Riley gets to escape the Nether region through the portal, and we just get to see everyone running through this portal looking very silly. The effects of the portal could have been a lot better. We get a confessional of Cameron referring to himself as Daddy, which sends chills down my spine. In the challenge, they have to hide from the frightening Nether Gorgon. Felicia running away from the Gorgon is really funny. So we get a lot of content of them running around and hiding. Also a few clips of them shivering scared. The final 2 of the challenge end up being Jared and Hisam, and Jared is overly confident about the riddle. He gets it wrong. So because of Jared's error, Hisam ends up being the HOH, and he is transported right back to the HOH room. Jared FaceTimes the house from the Nether region. My biggest complaint with this twist is that we don't get to see where they're staying when they're in the Nether region. So I know that these producers are cheap, and if we don't get to see where they're staying, they are staying in a hotel room, which is lavish. The Professors Alliance celebrates in the storage room because Hisam, one of their members, won HOH. The show seems to really be pushing the Matt and Riley showmance, and I thought this was just for the show, but later in the week, Matt and Riley actually do flirt, and he does say that he has a crush on her. So make of that what you will. Hisam's confessionals are the worst confessionals this season by far. He's either speaking like a robot or speaking in what sounds like a limerick. Hisam begins his evil reign by interrogating Matt and asking him direct questions about his alliance, and Matt does a good job playing it down. He claims that he doesn't know the alliance name that he does know. We find out that the Nether Gorgon demands more souls. Jared has to send somebody to the Nether, and they can't be nominated, so they'll be safe for the whole week. But Jared isn't safe? This makes no sense. So Jared picks Jag to go to the Nether, so he's safe, but he was pretty safe anyways. Hisam pretty much tells his nominees that they're going on the block, which I know a few years ago was very much against the rules, and I feel like it's still against the rules now, but it's kind of a rule that never gets upheld. We need Chrissy from BBOTT to check the rule book on this one. So Hisam ends up nominating Riley and Cameron, and the last thing that I wrote in my notes this episode was that Riley's memory wall picture is so much nicer than the picture that they used for the promos where she's shocked with her hands on her cheeks. I always wondered why they chose that picture, and there's so many great pictures of her. We come into the Wednesday episode. Riley and Cameron are on the block. Hisam laughs evilly and says, "This is how you win the game." I'm wondering, does the HOH camera where they can spy on the house still exist? People don't seem to watch it anymore, and back in the day, they used to watch it all the time like it was real TV. We get this conversation with Hisam and Riley where he's explaining why she's on the block, and he just comes across as so smarmy and condescending. This show actually does him a big service by editing him to be a lot nicer than he really was on the feeds, and he'll just smirk at you and squint his eyes and say, "Does that make sense to you, right? The fact of the matter is, you're my target. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Right? Right?" And I have a lot of respect for Riley for having patience with him in this moment and for not cursing this man out. We get a funny clip of them looking at the memory wall pictures and Felicia saying Corey looks like he's trying to be fly. Jag comes back from the Nether region, and he's safe, and I don't have any better ideas of what the producers could have done, but I feel like the Nether region safety chain twist could have been a lot more interesting. Before the veto meeting, Hisam makes an enemy of Matt by trying to intimidate him. The Scaryverse orb starts flashing, and Felicia reacts by saying, "I hope somebody ain't getting ready to leave going to what's her name?" And I agree. Jag has to pick someone not to play in the veto and to go to the Nether. Jag asks for some volunteers. He asks Mimi, Red, and Suri, who all say no, which I think was smart gameplay. He asks Bowie, and she says yes without giving it much thought. So off to the Nether she goes. I didn't even notice that she was there on the feeds until someone said she was there. Before the veto draw, there's an unusual amount of explaining of the veto chips and the house guest choice chip rules. Like, I don't remember them ever explaining it in this amount of depth. Matt and America get picked, and Riley gets house guest choice and chooses blue. This was a nightmare draw for Hisam. The veto competition is an extremely boring audio challenge with scratching a record back and forth And this is terrible planning for a season where you have a hearing impaired house guest. And there's been a lot of coverage online about this topic of what happened in the challenge. And I'm not 100% sure what actually happened in the challenge because the feeds went down for a really long time. And my impression is that Matt was having difficulty with the challenge that ended up taking a very long time. And they don't even end up showing Matt's time at the end result. So overall, I don't know what happened, but I know as a viewer, it just left me feeling icky. And like I knew that the producers were up to no good or did something wrong. And sometimes that feeling of ickiness is enough that you don't even need the facts. The best dressed person in the challenge was America, who had the best costume out of everybody. Part of the challenge is a set piece called the piano, which is a toilet with a bunch of piano keys around the lips. What do you call it? The seat. And I feel like Big Brother has always wanted to be a crude potty humor type show, which is really strange for a show that brands itself as like the sexy show of the summer, but then they also don't give them alcohol, but then they also are going to make it like a big potty pee pee poo poo show. And I've always left wondering like, who is this for? Like you'll never see Jeff Probst being like papa pee pee poo poo. And certainly this joke is a little blue for even Julie to watch. You'll never see Julie host a challenge that has this kind of poo poo pee pee. Also, why is Joseph a banjo? On Matt's turn, they edited it like he had no problem. And there wasn't one DR confessional of him even giving his point of view of, you know, how this could be challenging for him. Again, it just feels like the show is trying to cover its own ass. Hisam crushes the challenge. They end up only showing us the top 3. Hisam wins the veto and says, well, well, well. The show randomly puts in that Jag and America apparently have a showman's name of Jamaica because it's not summer without romance on Big Brother. Bowie comes back from the nether. Hisam once again sits Riley down to ream her and tell her why she sucks. Hisam then decides not to use the POV, and his speech wasn't as awful as they made it out to be, or maybe it was edited to be a little bit nicer as they did previously in the episode. But in real time, when the feeds came back from the speech, everyone was acting like it was extremely targeted and offensive, and this didn't seem like what they were talking about. On the Thursday episode, Julie is wearing a blazer with a nude top underneath, which makes it look like she's just wearing a blazer and no top. And she's also wearing her hair in a RuPaul pony. Overall, I give Julie credit where credit is due. She did not stumble once in this episode. Julie was on her A game. There was one point where Julie walks out into the crowd, and Julie never walks out into the crowd. This is a new trick. We get a really profound confessional from Riley where she says, anyone who knows me knows who I am. We get some fallout from Hisam's evil speech. Suri and Izzy convene to talk about Hisam rubbing everyone the wrong way. We get a flashback to where Suri had promised Riley her vote. I feel like Suri's word means a lot to her, so making this promise I feel like was a big motivation for her to try to flip the house this week. But it helps Suri's case that they all agree that they didn't like Hisam's speech. Felicia says that the speech had no human kindness. And I love that Felicia and Suri have a final 2 and they call each other the bookends. There's a funny moment where Cameron sits Jared down and tells him that he is confident that Felicia is Denzel Washington's sister, which is probably the funniest content that we're going to get from Cameron all season. Suri has a confessional that was really enlightening for me because it's clear to me that the Professor's alliance is not very important to Suri, but the Bye Bye Bitches really is important to her. And all week long, I thought that Suri's gameplay was getting a bit messy, but she really did uphold the Bye Bye Bitches alliance, and she was doing things that were in their best interest. The professors all meet, and the editors have a field day with editing Hisam, interrupting everyone and talking over everyone. Then he makes a real big mistake when he brings up Jared as a target. Izzy and Suri decide that they need to backdoor Hisam at this point. I thought this episode did a really good job of painting the picture of what happened during this flip, where one thing I actually missed on the feeds, Hisam starts bonding with America, and he basically tells America that he doesn't want to be in his alliance because he feels like his alliance has weak competitors. So he has big traitor energy. America rats him out to Corey. Corey's reaction is, my God. America tells Corey not to tell anyone, so naturally he immediately goes to tell everyone. He tells Izzy, Suri, and Felicia, who instantly get fired up. Here's where the editing kind of yada yadas through this, because Izzy and Suri fully did organize the entire house to actually flip until they got to Mimi, who then had her big monologue in the storage room. And I guess they were short for time, because what we ended up getting was Izzy and Suri going to Mimi and asking Mimi if it was okay to flip, and Mimi just saying it wasn't a good idea, and then it was over. Which is a shame that we didn't get Mimi's storage room monologue, because that was the best thing that happened all week. And it also is a shame that we didn't get a segment about Felicia's grocery order. So we get to their final speeches. Cameron takes one last time to be weird to Riley and to call himself daddy. Riley goes out with a whimper, just shouting out her family and then messing up her speech. The time management in the second half of these Thursday episodes is really bad. bad, where we have 4 votes and then a commercial. Why do this if it's going to end up being a unanimous vote? Let's just get these votes quickly done. The vote is unanimous, so Riley's voted out. Julie asked Riley who she thinks is the secret relationship in the house, and I think that Julie needs to rephrase this question, because if I was asked that, I would think that there was a romantic relationship, but Julie's also the same person who thought that the guinea pigs were in a romantic relationship on season 9. But I think that Riley gives Julie the reaction that she's looking for when she finds out that Suri and Jared are related. Once again, we don't get a live HOH. I think they do this on purpose because they want us to watch the challenge and not the live feeds. But Julie says that next week we're going to get the pressure cooker competition on the live feed. So guess who's not going to be watching the challenge? This guy. I'll tell you what, he has 2 thumbs and runs a podcast. But with that, we say goodbye to Riley this week, who was 16th out of 16 in my preseason ranking. At the time, I thought that she had first boot energy. And who's to say what happens in a universe where she doesn't win the first HOH? But even after winning the first HOH, I still had her ranked lowly because of the way that she handled that whole situation. Overall, I think winning the first HOH puts you in a place where you can build such great relationships with everyone in the house. But Riley didn't take the opportunity to get to know everyone in the house. She really only chose her side. And even though I don't think it was her idea to make an 8-person alliance, the other side of the house saw her as the figurehead of that group. But since perception is reality, everyone on the other side of the house saw her as the head of the snake. And once Hisam won that HOH, he saw her as that cartoon chicken leg that was floating ready to get devoured. He was playing with her like Scar was playing with that little mouse in The Lion King. But she fought to the bitter end, and she was doing a very good job. And of all people on Big Brother who have played a victim card, I feel like she was pretty effective in what she was doing. She did a really good job playing the victim after Hisam's speech. I was convinced that that speech was going to be extremely offensive. So congratulations to Riley. You surpassed my expectations. I thought you would be the first person voted out. You were the second. So let's get into some rankings, shall we? At the time of this recording, it's Thursday night. I watched the live eviction, and I do not know who's going to be HOH. I guess if there was a live HOH, I would have based my ratings around who won that. But without that information, I'm just going to be ranking how I feel like everyone is doing coming out of that vote. So I have at 14th out of 14, Cameron, who last week was 15th out of 15. And I feel like he's still not in a good spot. A big reason why the house was about to flip is because a lot of the females in the house just have genuine distaste for him. And I feel like he's still not in a good spot. Especially Suri and Izzy, I feel like just really don't like Cameron as a person. He just rubs them the wrong way. Based on all the games that I've seen Suri play, this kind of person, this kind of guy is just not the kind of person that Suri likes to be around. She will take effort to get rid of them from her life. So based on the fact that he only has one strong alliance with Red and is so uniformly disliked in the house, he's going to be on the bottom for a long time. I actually can't really think of anything that he could do to get out of this bottom spot for me. So at number 13 out of 14, I have Hisam, who was 11th last week and was previously higher than that. Coming into this season, I knew that he was going to be a very messy player, but I actually thought he was going to be more well-liked and better with people than he really is. He's coming into this week a number 1 target for a lot of people in the house, and the only reason I have him above Cameron is I believe that Cameron will be initially put on the block, and an important part of Hisam going home is Hisam not winning a veto, and he's won all of the vetoes this season, so he has a better chance of winning that competition than Cameron has. Overall, I think it's not looking good for him. I think if he finds himself on the block on a Thursday, he will be going home, and the rest of the players in the house are incentivized to send him home before the jury because they're convinced that there's going to be a battle back. In 12th place, I have Blue, who was 13th previously, and before that was even lower. And I feel like Blue moves around in my list, but mostly because of the faults of others. She does what she does well, which is bonding with the people that are immediately close to her on her side of the house. What she doesn't do well is she's not very well integrated with the other side of the house. She's in most of the other side's combinations of people that they would nominate. So overall, I think that there's just way too many chances that she gets on the block. I do think that the final nominees next week are likely to be some combination of Cameron, Hisam, and Blue. I do think that there's some sentiment in the house of not wanting to evict 3 females in a row that would keep Blue this week, but I think that that would just be a one-time pass kind of situation. What she would have to do to get higher in my list and to get further in the game would be to integrate herself somehow with the other side of the house. Or the other side of the house would have to completely implode, including the bye-bye bitches, which I just don't see happening. So if she wants to make it to the jury, she needs to take a more active, not a passive role in the game. In 11th place, I have Matt, who was 12th, and just like Blue, he's not moving up based on his own merit. The good in his game is I do feel like he's very well liked and respected by the other house guests. The negative is I don't think he has much interest in getting too involved in the game. I feel like of his alliance, I could see him being the last person standing, but I don't think he'll ever randomly discover any kind of interest in playing the game to a higher level. It's also not great that Riley was his number one source of information and now she's gone. And Riley wasn't coming to him with bad information. Riley was a pretty reliable source. So it's tough because he would have to make other relationships, but it feels like the game is already in motion. Everybody has a dance partner and he's kind of just standing there alone. In 10th, I have Bowie, who was 9th on my previous ranking. And I said last week, the reason why I had Bowie so high on my list is I could see her making it really far in the game. I can't see anyone wanting to waste their HOH getting her out. So for longevity reasons, I put her higher than others, but I can never see her winning the game, and the fact that her own alliance doesn't think that she has interest in playing the game enough to ask her her opinion, despite respecting her, is not good. I think the only people that Bowie would win a jury vote against would be Cameron and Hisam, and neither of them are going to be there with her. So it's kind of a similar situation to Matt, as she would need to discover an interest in playing the game sometime soon for her to have a chance of winning. I don't think she could ever be running the game, but if you want to win the game, you have to play. In 9th place, I have Red, who was in 8th place previously. So kind of in the same spot. I think that Cameron staying in the game was really bad for Red because people see them as a duo. Also, the more time that goes on, the more it becomes clear to the viewers that the Professor's Alliance isn't real and that Red is really not included in Cerie's plans. The reality of the matter is we have the bye-bye bitches who are targeting the handful, but they also have the handful convinced to target the men in the Professors, which puts Red in a very dangerous position in the game. The best game move for Red would be to completely jump ship and join the other side. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think we'll just see him continuously drift down in my ratings. Speaking of someone who is continuously drifting down in my ratings, we have Jag, who was 5th last week and 2nd at some point in time. Jag's biggest downfall is he's so committed to his alliance that is failing, which shows that he's loyal, but the fact that he tried and tried and tried to get the house to keep Riley, and he really just didn't have the social swing to get it done, makes me less optimistic in his ability to make a big move further down the line, with the dynamics in the house being like they are. At number 7, I have Izzy, who was 10th in my rankings last week. So last week, Izzy was in a more precarious position. The way the house was situated, if the handful were to win HOH, they would have nominated Hisam and Izzy just up front. And Izzy, despite being in the majority alliance, has been making inroads with the other alliance, which I think has really helped her in the game to make connections that could save her from being nominated if the other side wins HOH. That being said, long term, it's not looking good for Izzy. I just don't think it's a good idea for her to be teamed up with Jared and Cerie. I just have an instinct that Cerie is going to craftfully organize Izzy's demise. But I think that Izzy's in the best spot that she's ever been. That's why I've ranked her the highest that I ever ranked her. In 6th place, I put Jared, who was 3rd last week. He was really impressing me. I felt like he was running the entire house last week. But this week on the feeds especially, he really showed himself to be a very messy player. I don't think he's as calculated as he was being earlier in the game. The open flirting with Blue, I think especially, isn't helping, because he'll flirt with Blue and then he'll walk away and she'll roll her eyes or she'll say he talks too much to the cameras. Overall, I feel like he's highly likely to make mistakes, especially mistakes that would be a liability to Cerie. I know on these reality shows, we've seen some parent dynamics. I know on Survivor, we've seen a daughter vote out the mother. I think on Big Brother, we might see the mother vote out the son. I also don't feel like Jared and Cerie are really dividing and conquering as much as Jared's game and Cerie's game are going in two different directions. And they really are playing against each other. I feel like she's drawn to one side and he's drawn to the other side. And through that, because it's not on purpose and it's organic, they're playing against each other. And through this, I feel like Cerie would just have a better chance of winning the game by going to the end with the bye-bye bitches than continuously trying to protect Jared. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe I watched too much TV. At number 5, I have Felicia, who previously was 6th. And we all know that I love Felicia. She's the gift that keeps on giving, and she's so entertaining. But Felicia's in a great place in the game. She's not a target for the opposing alliance. She's in the bye-bye bitches, which is a loyal group. She's not at the bottom of that group. She's usually the first person to get a good read on a situation, and everybody comes to her for advice, so she gathers a lot of information, and she keeps a lot of it to herself. In the beginning of the game, I was a lot more worried about her endgame than I am now. If she goes to the end with the people that she wants to go to the end with, I actually feel like she has a good chance of winning a few competitions. But overall, it's kind of the same as it was last week. I would love to see her win HOH eventually, because I would love to see her HOH basket. She better have that Tivana tea bags. She better have strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries. She's got to have double meat. She's got to have the eggs. Where are they? She wants Milky Way, Almond Joy. She wants a Starbucks cup with the lid. So I want these feet to turn on. I want Felicia to be HOH. Do I ask for too much? In fourth, I have Corey, who was seventh, which was a dip from my initial ranking, so he's kind of back up to where he was before. Overall, he's in a good place. I talked earlier about that we have the bye-bye bitches, we have the handful, and then we have the people who aren't really in the professors who are really the targets. But Corey doesn't fall into any of those groups, which is really great for him because he's almost guaranteed jury. He's not very likely to catch any kind of strays anytime soon. Really, the worst thing that could happen is that he's somehow exposed for his behavior and people catch on. Like if everyone just realizes that nobody's targeting him and they decide to target him, which is just such a random way to get sniped out of the game that I can't fault him for that situation right now. He also has a few really valuable one-on-one connections. Notably, he's super close with Jared and Mimi and America. A lot of these middle players who are in a similar place as him, I feel like they all see each other and are aware that they're all playing such a good game, but they also don't want to point fingers at each other because that would also be pointing fingers at themselves. So these middle players kind of have to band together to stay on the low. So yeah, I think he also has enough sense about him to stay in this good position for a really long time. At number 3, it hurts my heart to do this, but I did put Suri, who was first last week. The thing with Suri is I think that she's confident enough in her game ability to play a messy game with the confidence of, I'll just clean this up later. I'm skilled. I can just, make a mess. I can dump all the pieces out and put them together. It's no big deal. And I think that she's in a good place after the events of this week. But I think that she really could have been in a bad place if the flip to keep Riley would have actually happened. So I'm really grateful for her sake that it didn't happen, because I think that that flip would have been really bad for her game. It would have kind of blown up the Professor's Alliance that I think that Serene needs right now as a cover. And a lot of it I feel like was just playing around and carelessly making enemies in the game. There is a chance that this completely does blow up at some point during this week, depending on who wins HOH. Or if Hisam somehow wins HOH and someone goes to him saying Suri was saying your name. He made his rules quite clear about what happens to people who say his name. So overall, it's just not as clean of a game as it was last week. Coming at number 2, I have America, who is the highest up in my rankings as she's ever been. So you go, girl. God bless America. I have her so high because the piece of information that she took from Hisam to Corey set off a chain of events that was so powerful. She was playing a very passive in the background game, but she's starting to get more involved in a very slow way. But it's really showing that she has really good instincts and she's planting seeds in the right places, where it's kind of the opposite of Jag, where he tried to do things this week and the things that he were doing were ineffective, and the small things that America were doing were very effective. So for that reason, I did put her very high in this list. Also, in the previous week, a lot of people were talking very negatively about her in the house, saying that they weren't connecting to her. This week, we had a lot more people saying, I finally talked to America and she's a real one. I like her. Things like that. She's getting herself into a good spot in the house, and the more big events happen, the less of a target she becomes. But at number 1, I have Miss Mimi Nicole, and Nicole was number 1 in my preseason rankings. I said last week I could see her being number 1 again. Nicole is in the bye-bye bitches. She's in good standing with pretty much everyone in the house. When the flip was happening, it particularly was not good for her game. At that time, Riley knew that Nicole was not down to do the flip, so if Riley would have won HOH, Nicole would have been one of the first people that she nominated. So the flip didn't work for her. She told the live feeders this does not work. She said, I'm not going to let that happen. And she had so much influence over the house that she didn't let it happen. So props for her for not letting something happen that would have been bad for her game. She is very influential, as we can see. She's making the right moves at the right time. And she's, of all the people who are playing in the middle, playing the most active game. And she's most infused into the majority alliance. So that's all I have to say about this week. Let me know in the comments what your player rankings are. What were your thoughts about the week? What did you think of Julie's outfit? Could you see the shirt that she was wearing under her blazer? I need to know. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Right now I'm covering Love Island USA, The Challenge, Stars on Mars, and Big Brother. I'll be back next Friday to talk about Big Brother. As I'm talking about that, I'm going to be watching Pressure Cooker. Can you believe? I've never watched that live. So I've got to go. I've got to cancel my plans for next Thursday and Friday because they're going to be in that glass chamber for probably 58 hours. Until next week, bye.